order. This meeting of the Denville Township Board of Education is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Daily Record and/or the Star Ledger of Morris County, has been delivered to the Township Clerk, and has been posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education office and in each of the school buildings in the district. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carmelo?
Here.
Mr. Cass?
Here.
Mr. Orr?
Yo.
Mr. Kim?
Here.
Mrs. Wapner?
She will not be able to make it. She got called up.
Mrs. Gould?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Here. We have no need for executive. No. Okay. Move on to the remainder of our agenda and rise to the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will move on to our special presentations, and we have our public hearing for the 2019-2020 Denville Pre-K through 8 school budget.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for all coming out. I know that we had a little minor glitch that we had to fix, and we appreciate everybody's cooperation trying to get this thing going, even though it wasn't our deal, but we still had to do it anyway. So, our budget. First year, we'd always like to put the strategic plan down so we remember what we're doing here. And the budget should fund the things in the strategic plan. Remember our 4 goals, and you notice not every, but most of our resolutions have a reference number that refers back to one of those goals up there. Our goals for this year is, the first goal is to obtain future-ready status, which we are moving along nicely on that. We feel very confident that by the end of the school year we'll be able to submit, and we feel confident that before, or at least by the beginning of next school year, we'll be announcing that we will achieve the bronze future-ready status. We also have increased achievement for all students who are not meeting grade level benchmarks, something that Dr. Cullis has been working on very hard all year with our coaches and our administration and our staff. Improved mental health supports. We've been talking about this for a while. It's an area of concern that everybody has, not just in Denville, but throughout the country. And we have been putting things in place to try to help that. And we have developed a great partnership with St. Clair's. And we also continue to investigate and prepare for potential student population growth. Just to remind everybody, we do have a few developments that look like they're going to be coming down the road and that are going to be approved. One is by Morris Knowles, and that should be somewhere in the 150 3-bedroom unit range. Redmond Press, I know, is moving forward, but there's some legal things slowing it down, and also the apartments by Zeke Field are progressing. So those are the kinds of things that are going to happen. We also have, Dr. Cullis has pointed out that our typical year over the last few years was about 30% of the incoming kindergarten are first child in the family, but now we're looking at about 50%, which we may be able to extrapolate from that there may be an increase in kindergarten students. And this is going to be a little an odd year too, that our outgoing 8th graders will equal how many are the kids that are coming in kindergarten. Next thing is our budget breakdown. As you can see, the majority of our costs are salaries and benefits. That's not atypical of a school district or any government entity. Here's our budget breakdown. We have our discretionary items are around 96%. I'm sorry, 95%, and our non-discretionary is around 5%. Non-discretionary does include all salaries, and discretionary includes our supplies, textbooks, technology, professional development, and capital projects.
the non-discretionary.
What did I say?
You said discretionary.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, now just
Yeah.
clear for the,
The one that you don't control is the smallest one. The one that you don't control is the biggest one. The one that you do control is the smallest. Thank you. This is an interesting slide, this next one. I always like to bring this up because our property taxes, our local property taxes fund approximately 93% of our budget. Now, Damaris showed me the Newark Schools budget. It was around $1.1 million, $1.1 billion. Out of the $1.1 billion, only about $200 million come from the local taxpayers in Newark. The other $900 million come from somewhere else. So, as you can see, ours is the exact opposite of that. Now, I'm not making any kind of political statement about whether or not Newark's budget is too much or whether or not they should be funding more of it. It's just something to bring out that even though ours, the small sliver is the sliver that comes from somewhere else, other people are doing the same presentation tonight, and the small sliver is their local tax share, and the big piece is what's coming from somewhere else. Here's our budget categories. We always put this slide in there. Basically, breaks it down into a few different areas: instruction, special education, basic skills, extracurricular, health, guidance, media, administration, maintenance, employee benefits, state and federal grants, and capital outlay. So this budget provides money for technology, just like all of our budgets do in the last few years. We upgrade, we replace. The things that we buy don't last forever. If you remember when we first started, I think all of you, well, not all of you, but most of you are on the board when we did the one-to-one initiative, when we started it, so we phased it in. This is the first year that the kids' 8th grade Chromebooks will be recirculated back. We feel like we can get another year out of it, but if you recall, we planned for 3 years. We need to get replacement every 3 years of Chromebook. So we still have to always replace Chromebooks. We have to upgrade our servers. We have replacements for FM systems. If you're not sure what an FM system is, it's a thing that is like a PA system kind of that the teacher wears that is plugged into speakers out in the ceiling of the classroom. We also have some replacements for the music lab at Valley View, the iMacs, 3D printer, and a whiteboard replacement. We do have additional funds in the budget for security. We have the increase in salaries from $35,000 to $42,000 per officer, which we did this year, but we didn't put it in the budget until next year. It was one of those things that we had to use some breakage last year to pay for. And some additional cameras and replacement of cameras. So this next slide is buildings and grounds. Now, these are the things that obviously we have more in the budget, but when we talk to you about some plans that we had to do to address some immediate needs that came up after the budget was really worked on. And we discussed this with the board, with the finance committee. I discussed it with several of you just one-on-one about taking some money out of the facilities and putting it into personnel because we have some class sizes that have exploded and we need to split some classes. We have some IEP mandates, things like that need to be addressed, and there's some additional personnel that need to be hired. So it's not that we won't do the projects, we're still doing them, okay? We're just going to use the capital reserve and maintenance reserve, and we feel very strongly that whatever we take out, we'll be very close to putting back at least that. So if we take $700,000 out, we feel confident that we're going to be very close to putting $700,000 back. So we'll still be even. We have about $3 million in reserves. We're going to use some of them, but we're still going to put it back whatever we take out. So this budget also provides funds for some other items, like the additional program at St. Clair's, the clinical services, district-wide. That would be expanding the program to Riverview and Lakeview. It also includes some additional behaviorists We have some additional, we have an increase in charter school tuition that the state has told us to prepare for. And just to remind everybody, a charter school or students that want to go to a charter school, which is a public school that's funded by the sending districts at 90% of your per pupil cost. So basically, if anybody wants to go, we have to send 90% of our per pupil cost to the charter school. We have some items for curriculum and other. We have our big ideas, algebra textbooks, continuing that, classroom libraries, elementary Amplify Science kits, online textbooks for health, some middle school novels. We have this new math program, Freckle Math, in grades 6 through 8. That's been phased in over what?
So that's new this year.
That's new for this year. We have some on-course assessments. We have our typical products we need to buy for our bio class, and some phonics, manipulatives, literacy intervention. Here's our property tax comparison. This is our comparison group. You can see where we fall. We're 6 in that group, so there's 12 districts now. A couple of districts dropped out due to some size changes, some other demographic changes. So there's 12 districts. We're right in the middle of our per pupil, budgetary per pupil cost. Here's a couple other charts we have. So the chart on the left explains our summative per pupil, our summative rating that Dr. Cullis put together. And our schools, Riverview and Lakeview, were both 0.05% away from each other, ranked number 2 and 3 in our comp group. So there's 32 elementary schools in our comp group. Lakeview is 2nd, and 0.05% below that was Riverview. I bring that out because it's not only that they're both ranked high, but they're so similar. That's exactly what we're looking for. Because that means that the programs that we've put in place for years and trying to make sure everything's standardized as much as possible is working. And our middle school is basically right in the middle of middle schools. This is not something that we weren't expecting. It's an area that we're working on. Dr. Cullis has spent a lot of time working with the math department up there, with our math coach, and we're obviously never happy with where we are. We're always looking to get better. I put a couple other slides in here. Our total population of geometry and algebra, if you can see that one arrow on the left. Basically, that's all the kids in geometry and algebra divided by the total population of the school. And we're like third place in that. So I thought that was a pretty good, another good indicator. Then we have on the right our scores compared to this comp group when we compare our percentage of adults 25 years or older to our ELA scores. So there isn't a strong correlation, but there is a correlation. And the good thing is we're outperforming our demographic. So we finished that's our little dot over there on the bottom right. So you can see we're lower on the scale of college graduates, but we're higher on the ELA scores. So that was something that I thought we should point out. Here's our budget. Basically the breakdown, you've all seen this. There was an updated one in the folder the other day that just showed that we were going to remove some of the funds that were placed in there from facilities and put them into personnel. The reason why we need to do it now is because once the preliminary budget has been struck and approved, the only way we can do it is at this meeting where the board, we would shift this and the board would approve it, and then Damaris makes the changes in the system tomorrow and we get it approved by the county. So in other words, if we don't do it tonight, we can't do it. And this does include a $95 a year tax increase to the public on the average house. Some of our cost drivers. So there are always increases in special education costs. It's not just, the the typical cost increases. It's just the cost of running a program. Now, this is something that's really important, and I want the board to try to understand this, and it's something I've talked to you about. When we keep a kid in district, like we have a kid that's on the bubble, maybe he can't stay in, maybe he can, and we keep him in instead of sending him out of district placement. Just to remind everybody, out of district placement can cost up to $100,000. So if we do that, and we have a kid that's on the bubble, we're not going to save $100,000. We're probably going to save about $50,000. The reason being, that kid's going to require more services than maybe that we can address with our personnel. They need behaviorists, they need speech, OT, PT. They need a one-on-one aid sometimes. So it's not like $100,000 savings. So our costs still go up, but they just go up less. Okay? Our mental health services is going up, and I talked to all of you about how I feel about that in private session, about some of the issues we're running into right now. Some of these things, some of our budgets are based on legal, true budgeted costs, meaning like sometimes our budgets prior may have been like an estimated cost, but now it's based on a budgeted cost. Obviously, security enhancements, facilities projects, and health benefits. Even though our health benefits, like we're happy about a 6% increase, but when something's growing, a large piece of your budget's growing at 6%, and you have a 2% cap, it is an area of concern. And just to remind everybody, we are leaving $141,000 in a waiver for our medical benefits. The state said we could take due to a 6% increase in the medical. Now that money doesn't just go away. It is going to go into the banked cap. I bring this up to you because you saw the things that we talked about in that sheet I sent you on some of the budget stressors. And you also understand that if the same thing happens again next year, it's going to be another budget stressor. I can't predict whether or not we'll need 9 sections of kindergarten next year. If the trend is holding true, we may. But if we do, I want you all to understand that we may need to take some or all of that $141,000. It doesn't just go away. But the taxpayers don't pay for it now. It's a good part of the law. It allowed people, because before, if you weren't allowed to do that, people would just take the money because they're afraid to lose it. I actually like that, because they're saying, hey, you don't need it this year. If you need it the year after, you can take it the year after. It doesn't just make you take it. This is something I think we all should be proud of. It's something we've been talking about for a long time. We've had an activity fee since 2010, and this is the first year we won't have an activity fee. I like that we're phasing it out. I like that we phased it out. I like that it's now eliminated. I don't know if it will have an impact on more kids going out for something. The cost wasn't super high, but I just like the idea that we're now at the point where, let's not charge an activity fee. And I like the fact that everybody in the room is behind it. This budget also includes an increase for clinical service program at St. Clair's. And another thing we should all be proud of, that we paid off the last of our debt service from the bonds that were refinanced in 2009 from the last referendum that did the large addition at Lakeview. So, right, we have debt. We have debt because we do lease some things. Like we did the ESIP program. We have a lease. We have some leases for computer stuff, some buses. So we do have a little bit of that, but we no longer have that bond debt anymore. We don't have that many districts that don't have bond debt. It's a pretty good thing. And not only that, if I was standing up here telling you we're proud of that, but our buildings were falling apart, I think I'd be doing everybody a disservice. But we're not, though. I'm saying we don't have debt and our buildings aren't falling apart. We're still doing the right thing. Maintaining our facilities, buying buses when we need it, buying vehicles when we need it for our employees. We're not skimping on things and then just standing up here touting that we don't have debt. We have money in reserves, and that's a great thing. We're doing projects every year. We have $700-something thousand worth of projects going on this year. We had over $2 million worth of projects over the last couple of years. If you recall, this school year was the first year that we don't have kids in trailers, so we've done a lot of good things, and we still didn't have to go out to the public for any additional funds to take on debt. So I want to make sure you guys realize that we should all be proud of the fact that we have no debt, but we still did jobs. That's the big deal. Because a lot of people do tell, oh, we have no debt, but everything's falling apart. So we've done both. We've been able to do both. And if you need questions or anything, obviously, public, you can contact me. My email's up there. For everybody that's in the audience. And that's my whole speech here. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Steve, on the bank cap, just for everybody's, refresh my memory too. How long before the bank cap that we approved this year will expire?
You can use up to 3 years. So if you don't use it and you go into the 4th year, it's gone. But you have up until 3, and you can take a little bit. You don't need to take all of it.
Sure.
You can take, a small percentage of
And
it.
after the 3rd year, it's gone. What
After the
about-
3rd year, it doesn't matter, and you can't get an extension. There's no mechanism for that. We've already asked and everything, so that's it.
If healthcare costs go down next year, do we lose it?
We won't lose that, but we might not get another one.
Okay.
Yeah, because basically what they're saying is your budget was stressed by the increase in your health benefits. So here's a way to manage that. And then you can do it. But there is, obviously, that's a good point that you made. We may not qualify for one of our budget if our number doesn't go up. Yeah. And I also remind everybody, in our shared folder that we all work on, that team drive, I started the thing about facilities capacity, and there's a lot of good reading in there for you. Some of it's stuff we already have, but I wanted to put it all in one location, like our demographics. Dr. Cullis and I, we've done some work on that.
Steve, can you go back to the fair share slide on, our percent from locals in the town? Probably can't answer the question tonight, but that's a great slide to show the disparity, I guess, between different towns, probably small cities throughout the state, on how much aid we get. Okay, so we're at 92% and change. These other districts that we looked at that are getting more from elsewhere, what is elsewhere? And especially for like the same districts, how much are they getting compared to us? And that's certainly something to deal with our legislatures, because I know Governor Murphy has made an effort to actually increase the state funding to all the districts, which is good. It's a positive thing. But again, when you look at this and you say there's a big disparity between us and some of these other districts, I mean, it's just not right. There's a tremendous burden on our taxpayers to have to pay so much money for a great school system. But it's certainly something to be looking at, and also make the public aware of that. We're not getting treated fairly compared to some of the other districts.
So in 1976, the state, there was a case called Cahill versus, I don't know, Summative. And that case was basically to follow. It was all about that because our taxes are based on, our schools are based on property tax, that, your wealthier towns can afford to do things that maybe your districts that aren't as wealthy couldn't. So what happened was, with that case, came out state income tax. There was no state income tax before that. So the state income tax came in, and what that was meant to do was to provide state aid, state funds to fund schools to eliminate or at least reduce the disparities, as you called it, between the wealthier districts and the poor. But the interesting thing, though, Don, that you bring up is that our per pupil costs are $17,000. I mean, some of these other districts that are getting a lot more are $25,000. So the districts that were poorer at the time have $25,000 a kids, and the districts like ours are paying $17,000. So there is a big discrepancy on that. The good news, though, is because of the School Funding Reform Act of 2008 and the Senate 2 that we had a long talk about, Senate 2 changed it, and that's why we're down $122,000 more last year, and this year we're supposed to get for the next 6 years. And that's basically a reallocation of funds from districts that receive too much aid and whose population has gone down. Like a lot of the ones in the Jersey Shore area, like Toms River and Brick. Some of those districts, when they had, they may have had 15,000 kids and got aid based on 15,000 kids, but now they have $12,000 12,000 kids are getting their aid still based on 15,000. So that money is now being reallocated. And I don't know how much you're paying attention to it, but there's a group of districts, I think it was 31, it might even grow now, that are suing the state. But the good news is Sweeney and Murphy are holding pretty tough. And I'm also seeing like journalists that are not really siding for the people. I think my take on it, which is interesting, is there's a lot of these people that are complaining about it are smart people that I know. I really want to have a talk with them and without being like in any way, I don't know how I'm going to do it because I have to have a total straight face, but I want them to explain to you why they think that when you got too much, that it's not okay for us to take some of that now. Like, why are we, now they're saying they want to fully fund it, which they can't do, right? The state doesn't have the money to do it. But still, even if they did fully fund it, there wouldn't be enough for us because they're giving it to the wrong people. So, the good news, though, is, like I said, it seems like our politicians are hanging tough. At least I know Sweeney and Murphy right now are. I'm not sure if all.
I wouldn't say all of them are politicians.
Right. I know.
I would say that there are politicians in the state that are. The one thing I would remind everybody of is it's a good conversation, and yes, S2 definitely is designed to get it back to fair funding. But we can't go back and get the millions that we lost, and we're still this year being shorted $600,000. So yes, there's a 5-year plan to get us to the right spot, but we're still being shorted. I think everybody in Denville needs to realize that we're all excited. We're actually excited in this room that we're only being shorted $600,000 this year. I mean, it's amazing, but there is a plan over 5 years to get us there. So at least there's a plan, and I think all of us, by the way, if we weren't reasonable, meaning the people that were being underfunded that feel this is a good plan, we could have said, hey, we want it all this year, not over 7 years. But I think everybody realizes the fair thing to do is to increase the districts that were underfunded, decrease the districts that were overfunded, and get to a point of fair over 7 years. I think it's a fair formula, but yeah, I think it's important to realize that we can't go back and get the dollars we lost, and we're still being shorted, but we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, it's kind of, you're right, and I always used to make that point, but I kind of stopped now. I guess we're just happy that we're getting 122. But that's a good point, though, because if you notice, like, we're happy about a 6% increase in our medical. Yeah, because it's not 13, right? And we're happy that somebody's giving us 122, but still owes 600. And that's not great business, but obviously, it's like Mike said, it's a step in the right direction. Even the 6% increase is a step in the right direction. It's like losing less, I guess, right? So, I mean, good things are happening. I know Mike has been really concerned about it. We've talked. I'm really happy to see some of the journalists around the state. I'm really happy to see the two big players, the governor and Senator Sweeney, really holding firm on it. So let's see how this plays out. I'm not sure. All right, great. I know, by the time we do this, you've already heard this 5 times. But it's good how you actually had it.
That was awesome.
Thank you, Steve, for your presentation. We've only got one thing on the agenda here later, so I would say if anybody has any questions on the budget, let's hold off until we get to there. Steve, you want to make any
No other comments.
Dr. Collins, any comments?
Congratulations to all of our staff, and appreciation. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, staff appreciation versus appreciation. We do appreciate all the hard work and effort that you put into making it successful for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. State your name and address for the record and put your name on the sheet.
We're gonna have to do that.
Second one afterwards? Yeah. Okay. We'll have one other opportunity if anyone else would like to come forward. Otherwise, seeing no one come forward, I will close our first open public comment section at 7:30 p.m. and move on to our agenda. Mr. Cass, would you mind moving us through finance?
Sure. I'd like to move that the Board of Education of the Township of Denville approve the following resolution regarding the 2019-2020 school district budget. To resolve upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Denville Board of Education, County of Morris, New Jersey approves the following resolution. Further be resolved that the 2019-2020 budget of the Denville Board of Ed be approved by the Board of Education. This budget meets the requirements of providing New Jersey student learning standards and consists of appropriations as follows. The general fund, $33,166,248, and the special revenue fund of $386,284 for a total of $33,552,532. Be it further resolved that it should be raised for taxes for the general funds of $31,168,585 for the school year 2019-2020. And we have 6 items also that the Board of Education recognizes school staff and board members that would incur travel expenses related to and within the scope of their current responsibilities, and for travel that promotes the delivery of instruction or furthers the efficient operation of the school district. And whereas we also require board members to receive approval of these expenses by a majority of the full voting membership of the board, and staff members to receive prior approval of these expenses by the superintendent of schools and a majority of the full voting membership of the board. And a Board of Education may establish for regular district business travel only an annual school year threshold of $150 per event. Prior board approval should not be required unless this event's threshold for staff members is exceeded during July 1st through June 30th. And a Board of Education must establish a maximum dollar limit for travel expenditure as defined in New Jersey AC 6A 23A-7.1. And therefore be resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Denville approves establishing a maximum travel expenditure amount of $57,000 for the 2019-2020 school year. The maximum travel expense amount for the 2018-2019 school year is $57,000, of which $36,193 has been spent and $20,807 is encumbered to date. Last but not least, I'm asking for approval of a maximum annual expenditure for professional services in accordance with NJAC 6A 23A-52, parentheses 1, $31,000 for an auditor, $85,000 for an attorney, and $5,000 for the architect.
Second.
Mr. Lord? Any questions, comments? I have a few things I wanted to mention. First of all, I wanted to thank Damaris, the business office, finance committee, and the entire administration on all their hard work. It's a long season for several months of going through the budget cycle, reviewing, analyzing, scrubbing. It's a long few months, and I appreciate all the work from everybody to get to this point. I'm extremely proud of where this budget is and has been over the years. I mean, Steve mentioned a few things. I think it can't be said enough about paying off the debt services for this district. That's something that I know we've been working on for several years, and as Steve mentioned, was not done by sacrificing our buildings and grounds or our programs. I think they've been everything that Dr. Cullis and the administration has brought forward, not everything, but certainly everything that they feel is reasonable and needed for education has been, we found a way to fit it into our budget. And fitting things into a budget is no easy task when you're up against a 2% cap, and about 85% of your budget is salaries and benefits, both of which go up. Benefits went up 6% this year. As Steve said, we're high-fiving each other for a 6% increase. And our salaries go up greater than 2%. So when your majority of your budget goes up greater than 2% and you're still on a cap of 2%, and we're still able to maintain our reserve balance, which I think is important for the fiscal responsibility of the district. We're able to pay off our debt services, not go into additional debt services, and continue to provide the safe and efficient buildings and programs for the school. I think it's a big task. And at some point, I think I mention this every single year that that's a big task. And at some point, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to continue to do it, because, like I said, with 85% going on greater than 2%, it's a pretty monumental accomplishment. We mentioned it earlier, and I was going to mention the fact that we saw about $120,000 in increase in state aid, but like we said, we should realize that we should see it over the next 5 years to get to fair funding. And then the final thing I wanted to mention was just, I absolutely support continuing, like we talked about in our strategic plan, is to continue to support students with mental health services and needs as they see fit. I would ask that, although supporting this budget, I would ask that before we implement the St. Clair's Clinical Services, that we make sure that the IEP committee and everybody is comfortable with how that program is being rolled out. We had our first year this year, so lesson learned, how can we improve, how do we continue to leverage the professionals over there that we've got a great relationship with and continue to leverage, and find new ways to help our students in that area. It's certainly an area I think we've been very proactive with, and I appreciate it for looking into it. But that was all the comments I had for the budget. Anyone else want to?
I'll just add in, I was here back in 2010 where we had to charge for the extracurricular, and that was a real black mark on the former school board that was around back then, where we could not come up with some creative solutions to keep the extracurricular for sports and all these clubs at no cost to the parents. So it's been 9 years that we've dealt with that, and also we've been able to phase it out, which is good. Slowly but surely it was done, but that's just a tremendous accomplishment, and we should try to publicize it somehow. I'm sure there's a lot of people not around anymore when that happened. A lot of those kids are 9 years ago, so a lot of those kids are long gone out of our school system. But it's really great to see us picking up tackle that again.
Well, and just to add on to that, Don, I think another area in this budget that we should make sure we emphasize is another black eye to, I would say, this district has been the Valley View field and the condition of that field for years. I think we've actually, including myself, have become numb to the fact that we just don't use it. Right? It's okay. It's okay that we don't use it because we'll go play someplace else. And it's okay that the kids don't have a good place to play on the field that may not even be safe to a certain extent. But really glad to see that we're taking that project on, and that's going to be a huge advantage for the students, both extracurricular activities, but also during the school day, PE, as well as during recess. So I know it's a big project, and I think it's going to be well worth it once being completed. Any other questions, comments?
The last meeting, there was a question about transferring funding from facilities into personnel, I think. We got that settled, and that was that was the chosen method. The other three methods were not, or the other two, so whatever was on the list, it was the one we were going to pull it out of. Okay.
So, and just to clarify, I can pull my email because Mary sent me a nice email today to indicate kind of showing it. So just for everybody else's clarification on this. So yes, there were several projects that were basically reclassified. And Steve mentioned it briefly in his presentation that there were a few things that were not on that facilities list. because they're not coming out of the budget, but they're gonna come out of reserves, correct?
Correct.
And then, you know, once again, like we talked about, we're at least I feel comfortable where we are with our reserves right now, and I think the administration feels comfortable. So our goal is to keep that fairly stable after we take our excess surplus and put it into the reserves. So there were $20,000 for exhaust fan repair and replace, $20,000 for exterior door district-wide, $10,000 for interior door replacement, and $122,144 for value locker room repairs. That total is $172,144. So that 172, those are projects that are still going to be done. They're just going to come out of our reserves as opposed to out of the budget for this year. And then that additional $172,144 is going to get reallocated to a salary line for additional salaries that we needed for staff. Is that correct? Okay. Everybody good with that? Understand?
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Carmelo?
Yes.
Mr. Cass?
Yes.
Mr. Lord?
Yes.
Mr. Kim?
Yes.
Mrs. Wool?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes. We have at least two things. I mean, we're going to add in an open public comment section, but I'd also like to add in a for the good of the cause. Is that okay to add that in?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it matter what order we do it?
What is this open
For
call?
the cause and
Then, okay, that's what I thought. Okay. So I'm going to add in a section here for the good of the cause. Anyone has any questions, comments? I just wanted to echo Dr. Cullis's comments earlier about the Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week. Thank you to our incredible staff that continues to work hard and find ways to help all of our students every day. It's a pleasure to have them and see them. I'll tag on that last week. I wasn't able to attend both Riverview and Lakeview Festival of the Arts because they were the same night. So I was at Lakeview Festival of the Arts and it was phenomenal. I actually had to drag my kids out of there at 8:15 after Mr. Scala's second announcement that get out of the building. Get out. This is amazing. You have to come by. It was actually Laura's sons and my kids that were still there. We're like, get out. But no, it was awesome. I mean, great to see all the artwork. The teachers were all there to support and several different concerts. So thank you for staff for doing that.
I would like to echo Mike's comments about the Riverview-related arts night. The kids who were doing little duets and trios with the instruments were actually a bunch of them were really surprisingly good. The science fair was really fun to come and look at all the kids and all the stuff that they did. And it was amazing how many kids actually stood next to their projects or their posters and were willing to talk about them the whole time I was there. And again, there was the music room was full of kids using, I don't remember what they're called, they're sticks that make noises in different keys. Is that what they are? No, they like bang them on the ground. They make different, the noise they make is different. Yeah, it's like follow the bouncing ball. It's a really cool chunk of technology. And I really hope we're able to do it next year. And it was really cool, and I had a very good time, and the teachers and the kids put on a very good evening.
Anything else for the good of the cause? It is 7:44, and I will open up for our second open public comment section. Anything related to the district, if anybody has any comments, they can come up and give their name and address for the record and sign the paper. See no one come forward. I will close our second open public comment section at 7:45 p.m. And I will ask for a motion for.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And Mr. Kim, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? No? No abstentions? Here's the 7:45.